Hello everybody, Mannix here. Well, I got a knife review for you right here, right now, and this is just another example of something that was just too good to be true. This is the I can't even remember, EMHTiii, EMHTiii, some company I'm not very aware of. I tried finding an official website. I tried finding a catalog, product guide. Not terribly successful. I found a handful of other models I believe the same company makes, but I can't even find the model number of this knife anywhere. I'm just putting in the title what they have it listed as on most websites. But I scored this sucker for $10 on Amazon. It was on sale. It normally retails somewhere around $16, maybe a little bit under $17. Pretty great deal if this knife functioned the way it was intended to, and it was working very well for a while until I tried one thing and it ruined the locking mechanism right there. But let's just get the specs out of the way first because that's just routine. We have a 3.5-inch blade length. Handle is 4.5 inches, making the overall length 8 inches. The knife weighs 4.1 ounces. It's all metal, as you can see here, but it's heavily skeletonized all around. The steel liners in there are skeletonized along with these aluminum frames. Not sure what they coat this with, but I doubt it'll hold up for that long. It's got kind of a sparkly look to it. Looks kind of cheap, but I don't mind it. But for $10, you really can't expect a whole lot. Axis lock, as you can see right there, but we are going to talk about what happened. The blade steel is 3CR13. Yes, pretty much the same crap you see on the Ozark trails. Extremely soft. Gets razor sharp, cuts paper like air, but it will not hold an edge for very long. But for this price point, that's totally reasonable as long as you keep it sharp. You can even keep this as a defense knife if you just keep the blade very sharp. I say this all the time, but with really cheap knives, even with a cheap, crappy blade steel, if you just get it really sharp and keep it sharp and don't really use it that often, if at all, if that dark and rainy day ever came and you needed to use a knife to defend your life, it'll do the job. Yes, even a very cheap, bad, for lack of a better term, blade steel can still defend your life. So this can certainly do that. In fact, 3CR13 is what Spyderco uses on their bug line. They're really tiny knives. Don't know if they upgraded it since, but not bad, really sharp, really soft, sharpens easily. Certainly worth the $10. I like the ergonomics on here. It's thick, it's chunky, there's a lot to hold on to. It's actually insanely comfortable. I love this dip right here we have for the thumb. I love this big old choil we have to lock our index finger into. I like this cutout we have down here. My pinky lands perfectly right there. The width of the knife, there's no backspacer, it's a flow-through design, but its girth, the thickness of it, it's perfect. It's so comfortable. Kind of wish there was some jimping up here, but oh well, it's fine. We have some jimping down here, which works okay, I guess, for your pinky, I suppose. Reverse grip carries just like that. It's not really anything for your thumb to bite onto, but I would just carry it like this if you're going to do reverse grip. So actually extremely comfortable. I think it's really cool looking. It's total like teenager edgelord looking. It looks like it's trying really hard to be cool, so a lot of people are going to take one look at this and think that's extremely ugly. Yeah, I think it's ugly too, but I also like it at the same time. So that young boy wants a cool weapon-looking toy type thing. It looks like a toy. It does. The aggressive skeletonization, the sheer shape of it, it looks aggressive, mean, and nasty, but it looks like it's trying too hard. It looks like if a big knife company came out with something like this, most people would probably just kind of laugh at it. I still think it's cool looking, but it certainly looks kind of adolescent. It does not look like a gentleman's folder. It does not look like a mature adult would want something like this. I still think it's cool. I like stupid crap like this sometimes, I just think they're cool looking, but yeah, it's kind of juvenile looking, I'll just give it that. We have what I would like to say is a cleaver style blade right here, and I do like this shape. It's very aggressive looking, and I like how it's a cleaver with a tip. The main disadvantage cleavers typically have is that they usually end somewhere like that. There basically is no tip, or at least the tip is extremely obtuse to the point it's barely even usable to pierce things. But with this design right here, the sweep, we have an actual tip. Yeah, a very good tip. It pierces very well, so we have what would be the strength of a cleaver, but also some penetration capability right here as well. However, they kind of throw the whole strength thing out the window when it comes to the cleaver blade when we see these massive cutouts we have. Heavily skeletonized cleaver, and on top of that, it's relatively thin. It's not razor thin or anything, but it's not thick. It's a thin blade for being a cleaver, which is kind of contradictory to me. And again, that in combination with these two cutouts, yeah, it's not exactly a strong blade anymore. I still like it. It's still usable, but it's just kind of contradictory. It's not exactly a strong design. It's taking up a lot of space, but they skeletonized it. We have a lot of wasted space right here. This is meant for deployment. You can also deploy it with that cutout up there, With two hands, it works just fine. You can deploy it that way, conventionally. You can flick it out relatively easily. Before the lock messed up on me, we will talk about that. The main issue I had with this knife was very similar to the Gerber Sumo. Thick handle and then a thin slit opening on the steel. Not a thumb stud, it's a cutout. It's a hole. The problem with that is because it's the combination of the handle being so thick and the hole being so thin and the hole being so close to the handle, you have to kind of dig your thumb in there. Like with knives that have a thumb stud, you don't even think about it. You just move your thumb in a general direction, bam, it flicks open. This guy, you have to kind of give it special attention. You got to really dig the tip of your thumb in there. This knife is just screaming for a flipper. Every time I pick this knife up, I want to flip it open like that. I'm like, oh wait, there's no flipper there. Where is it? Doesn't it look like it should have a flipper? It looks like somebody ground it off, like it's missing. That would make the knife a lot more deployable, a lot more perfect. But that being said, we do have another method of deploying it, and that is the axis lock, or whatever they want to call their version of the axis lock. The handle should never be an issue with you. It's all metal. Even if it's just aluminum, it has steel liners. And even though it is very heavily skeletonized, we lose a lot of weight with that. Probably would have been closer to, I don't know, 5.4 ounces or something if we did not have any of this skeletonized whatsoever. So certainly a lot lighter than it could have been. I think it's right in the sweet spot of being a medium-sized folder, but we have a lot of edge to work with here. I like the way it looks, despite it being kind of cheese. It carries okay. This pocket clip is kind of wonky. It looks like an old-fashioned pocket clip from like the late 90s or something. That's just how I see it, but it works okay. I mean, we got quite a bit poking out of the pocket right there. It's a little bit on the tighter side, but I've seen worse pocket clips than this. I don't love it. I think it's kind of jank, cheap looking, old and cheap looking, but can't exactly complain too much about that. So we have an okay blade steel for the price, for $10, even $16. It's still totally adequate. This lock, it had a great lockup when I first got it, when I was first using it for a couple of weeks. I was really blown away by how smooth the action is. It's on a ball bearing track, by the way. These washers have ball bearings on them. So really smooth. It had a really great lockup. There was no side to side, no up and down. I mean, I tightened it and Loctited it myself to make sure the side to side stayed put. But it had a beautiful lockup, really smooth action, great ergonomics. It carried okay. At least it's tip up, even though it's not swappable to the left side. I mean, they could have made this a home run, completely ambidextrous, but they didn't. Despite this knife being total cheese, I still really loved it. But what is the problem? Okay, what's wrong with this locking mechanism? Well, although it was working perfectly fine, axis locks are kind of hit and miss when it comes to the really cheap companies. Some actually work almost as good as the Benchmades do, and some just don't. This is an example of one that did not. So it was working just fine, but what happened was, just for craps and giggles recently, look how much that recesses, okay? Just look closely how much space you have. There's a lot of extra space on the right of the locking mechanism there. You only need to pull it maybe about 75% of the way down there to free it from the blade if you want to open and close it. But for craps and giggles, one day I just did this. I pulled it down all the way it would possibly go, and as soon as I let go of it, the springs in there were ruined. It now loosened up on me. It doesn't lock properly all the time. There's up and down blade play. It doesn't retain as well in the handle anymore. I have a short on this knife. I'll roll in the clip right now. It was working perfectly fine. It was a beautiful knife. For $10, man. For $10, I was extremely impressed. You cannot complain about this knife for $10. It's probably the best $10 knife I've ever had. That was right up until I broke the axis lock. And all I did, literally once, I just pulled it back all the way down the track, 100% of the way, and it just ruined the springs. That's terrible. It's very inconsistent now. The lockup's messed up. It kind of half works. It's just, man, what a shame. For $10, we had a ball bearing track, kind of cool, at least very stylistic knife. Very good ergonomics. We had a great lockup, a great locking mechanism. The axis lock is known for being very strong and very fast. It's versatile. It's ambidextrous. It's fun. And it's tip-up carry with an okay pocket clip. Not terribly heavy. It's a little bit on the thicker side. It's kind of a shorter, stubbier, thick blade, but I just thought it was cool looking, and the price in combination with the ball bearings and the axis lock is what sold this thing for me, just because it was so cheap, and it had a whole bunch of other things on my checklist checked off. I was like, sure, why not? But, oh well. We have a crappy, cheap axis lock on here. The springs on there are just garbage, unfortunately. If they just close this off a little bit, they didn't give you such a wide gaping hole right there, because it's not even usable. If you pull it down all the way, you bend the springs. That was once. I literally pulled that down one time all the way and it broke it. I tried taking this knife apart and tightening the springs, and it helped. It's not like quite as bad as it used to be, but as I just messed it with it again on camera, it just ruined it again. You literally just have to go bink, pull that down slightly too much, and you ruin the locking mechanism. So this knife, unfortunately, although it's got a great concept and pretty, actually damn good execution for the money. I was really impressed. It was razor sharp out of the box too. It didn't dull up on me because I didn't really use it that much. But that locking mechanism, whatever they did to it, however cheap they put in those springs, maybe I just got a lemon, but that sucks. That's really unfortunate. It just broke on me, which I don't even consider that abuse. Abuse would be, I don't know, taking the knife apart and doing something you're not supposed to be doing, batoning with the knife or something. But that was just pulling it back within its actual proprietary track right there. Just pulled it back all the way and it broke the springs. For whatever reason, that ruined this model. It probably will if you get your own version of this. There's no problems with the screws stripping or anything like that. I was actually able to take this whole thing apart and put it back together. I was able to take the pivot screw out twice and put it back together. Nothing stripped. No heads got messed up or anything, which is common with knives, especially under even the $20 range. They strip so damn easily, but I had no issues whatsoever with that, and I was really impressed. It's just such a shame. We almost had a home run. One of the best $10 knives in existence, I think, for a folding knife, if you're into this design, if for whatever reason that's what you wanted. But that just ruined the whole thing. Sorry, it's got kind of a 1-to-1 ratio too. I accidentally cut myself once when I was flipping it open and close. I don't think I'm wearing the scar anymore. It was a tiny little cut, but I closed this down. For whatever reason, my hand was in the right way right there. And because the handle's so short in comparison to the cutting edge, yeah, it just kind of nicked me. Tiny little cut I got down there, but because it's so pointy and because it's so close to that handle, it's very easy to accidentally slip something in there and do a tip rip. So that is another issue I'll give the knife. It's flimsy. The blade's probably kind of weak just because it's so thin and because there's so many holes in there. I don't like how close that tip is. It's like dangerously close to the butt end of the handle. But overall, the biggest issue I have is just that locking mechanism. If it doesn't function properly, the knife essentially is broken. And I can't recommend it under normal wear and tear. Normal use, it just broke on me. So unless one day this company, EMHTiii, whatever they are, unless you fix that lock, sorry, I cannot recommend this guy. It's such a shame. So close. But broken dreams. Not going to cry about it, though. It was only $10, and it was from Amazon. Amazon's very good with the return, so I'm glad I still got it for the sake of the review, so I can warn all of you to avoid this knife if you can, if one day they improve upon it. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun gear videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.